set up. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna give everybody some time to join in. This is our first live virtual workshop for the next few weeks. We've got a lot of people in Ottawa and throughout Canada and the United States and throughout the world who are going through some pressing times right now with the COVID-19 virus. That being said, we wanted to come on and do a virtual workshop. We've canceled all of our events over the next few weeks to give everybody some time in Ottawa, Canada, a little bit of space and social distancing. That being said, today would have been one of our free events at the National Art Centre. So instead of doing that down there, we're going to be doing a little bit of painting here. So we're looking forward to everybody hopping on and joining us and learning some step-by-step painting. The paintings that we're going to do over the next few weeks are all geared towards all ages. I'm going to pick some basic, simple paintings, but with a lot of great techniques. And you can do it virtually on anything. If you want to grab some scrap cardboard or wood, canvases, paper, I guess the options are endless. Acrylic paint is what we'll be using. We've got our paintbrushes and our sponges and things like that. So again, I'm going to give a few more people a minute or two to hop on. I thought I would start the workshops today. I was sort of toying with doing a couple of different options, but we decided we're going to keep it simple with minimal colors because it was a little bit short notice. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to work on a sun or moonlit kitty. You guys don't have to do a cat. You can do owls. You can do virtually anything. You can paint whatever, but we're gonna sort of teach you guys the step-by-step on doing this. The reason why I chose this painting for today is because it's got 3 colors. So as long as you have black and white, any other color in the background will do perfectly. If you want to have a nice kind of red background, it'll look sort of like a fiery sunset. If you want to do yellow and make it a very bright sky, you can do that too, or even throw in some purple or green. The options are endless. So I'm going to show you guys step by step on how we are going to create our Moonlit Kitty. This will also be posted on our Instagram account later on today. So if you guys want to hop on there, if you don't have time to sit down and paint with us today, then by all means, hop on to Instagram, instagram.com/popuppaintersottawa. Okay, great. So I think we will get started. So basically, I'm going to switch this down to here so you guys can see our work surface. Okay. Just one second, I'll straighten that out for you. Okay, so as you can see, I've got our paint palette. We have some acrylic paints. I'm using blue, black, and white to create our painting today. We also have our sponges. I've pre-dampened the sponges. They're going to give our blend some really, really, really nice movement. So we can do that as well. And then any paintbrushes work. So I'm gonna be using a flat paintbrush as well as a pointer one, which is called a round paintbrush. So what you need to do to get this going, oh, hi Angie, hi Shannon, thanks for watching. So what we're gonna do to get started on our painting, I'm gonna get this set up so you guys can see everything. Let me just adjust this. All right, there we go. So what we're gonna do to get started today is we are gonna start with our background. So to create your background and to get all this movement around, we're gonna do it in 2 different steps. We're gonna start with applying our blue. So when creating this, you wanna leave the space for the moon empty. So you're gonna sort of envision where your moon is gonna go. And I always apply the paint directly onto the canvas. In this case, I'm actually using cardstock. It's a very thick cardstock. And then I'm gonna take my wet sponge. So there's not too much water, it's just a little bit damp. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start by creating the blank circle. That's going to be used as we put in our moon later on. So I'm going to leave it like that, and all I'm doing with my paint is I'm just circling it around and around. Make some more room here. Just like that. Now the reason why you want to keep the paint going in circular motions is because you do want the texture to be there. If you were to just put your paint going up and down, you're gonna smoothen it all out and you won't see those nice sort of glow lines that we're gonna create. So you wanna just keep the paint flowing in sort of a circular motion. Because our sponges are gonna end up soaking up a lot of that paint, you wanna sort of reapply and make sure you've got enough on there. That is, you can either turn your sponge upside down to use the cleaner side, or if you have an extra sponge, the trick is you don't want to have any of the blue paint mixed in at this point. You want it to be white, white, white. Hi, Steph. So what we're gonna do with our clean sponge, if you want to take a moment and go rinse out your sponge, sometimes the paint goes throughout and it gets quite dirty and you only have the one sponge. By all means, go do that, rinse it out. So you want to use a clean area of your sponge, or a clean sponge if you have one. And what you're going to do is you're going to put the white directly onto the canvas. And then what we're going to do now is we are going to create all of our lines and our glow. And what's going to happen is that blue is going to blend in, and you want to create almost like an ombre that's coming from the inside, or the sides of the moon and going all the way out. So what we're going to do is we're just going to continue with that circular motion, and then as we get to the sides, you want to smoothen out sort of those sides, and you're going to carry the white going around so you've got that glow from your moon. So if you guys can see that, now we don't have sort of that distinct line between the white and the blue. We've got sort of that nice circular motion. Hi, Erica. Okay, I'm gonna slow down for you guys. So I'm gonna re-describe what we've done. So this is a very simple two-step process to create your background for your Moonlit Kitty. So what we have done is we have made a circle around with the blue, leaving the center white. And what we're going to do is you're just going to bring that blue all the way around. And then you can also, if you guys have a canvas with thick edges, you can just continue that blue on the sides. And then what you can do is flip over your sponge. So you're using the cleaner side, or get a new sponge. And what you can do then is apply your white paint into the center, and you're going to use that to circle around and continue bringing those sort of ripples going all the way around. And what this is going to do, as you can see, is it sort of gives it that ombre look, and it blends out the glow throughout the rest of the sky. So while you're working on that, if you've noticed that there sort of is areas that are a bit too white, you can always go back in with your blue on your sponge and darken in some of those ripples. So I'm just putting in a few darker motions here. And then all this does is it just gives some dimension to the back of your sky, because we're gonna have so much focus on our black silhouette. We do want to have some distinction in the background. So this is done through the highlights and the shadows. Okay, so while you guys are working on that and getting your backgrounds all sort of smoothed out, I'm going to continue to give mine a little bit more emphasis on the shadows and the highlights, and then we are going to start with our kitty cat. Because I do understand that these virtual classes, it's hard for me to see what everybody is doing in terms of progress. So we want to make sure that you guys are all up on the same page. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to work on our background. And again, I'll re-describe the process. So we've started with our blue circling around the moon. We've left the moon white, so it's been blank. It is there's no color in the first step on the moon. It is just blue going around and coloring or painting in the entire outside of your sky. And then don't forget, if you have a canvas that has the edges, you do want to bring that paint down on the sides and the edges so that you've got no more white on the outside. You're going to have the plain white for the moon, and for that you're going to get a new sponge, dip it in your white, and then put the white onto the canvas, and this is where you're going to spread that all around. And to create sort of those nice glows in the outside, you do want to bring that ripple in a circular motion going around the moon, and you're going to carry it out as far as you can. And so we've got that as sort of our starting point for this workshop. Okay, so I will explain it again. I want to make sure everybody is caught up. It's quite tricky, I find, when you're not working to see everyone's progress levels. I know in some cases with the younger, with the kids workshops, the backgrounds go on very quickly. But I know sometimes our older painters, our teenagers and our adults, they take a little bit longer. They want to perfect, and I don't blame them. So we do want to make sure that everybody is caught up. So I will give you guys another few minutes to make sure. So again, you're going to just make sure your blue is done all the way around, leaving that white part empty, and then you will switch over the side to the clean part of the sponge or get a new sponge, and you will apply white, putting white directly into the center of your moon, and you're smoothing out the edges and bringing it all the way around. This is again going to give you your shadows and your highlights that are going to carry through to give the glow around your moon. Perfect. So for our background, as you guys can see, this is our first step in the online workshop today. Okay. So now what we have to do for our next step. So fingers crossed, everybody is all cut up and your backgrounds are ready for the next step. So for this step, you have a couple of options. We can draw on with chalk our background image, or you can use a pencil or a light pencil crown if you want. Chalk works best. The reason why we use chalk is because the acrylic paint and the chalk will not dry together. So when your painting is all dry and it's fully cured to your surface, usually it takes about 3 to 4 days. If it feels dry, it might be dry on the surface, but it takes quite a few days to fully cure to the painting material, whether it's a canvas or wood. So what you want to make sure is that if you do wipe off any of your chalk or pencil drawings down the road in a couple of days, you want to make sure your drawing or your painting has fully dried. You don't want to rip any of that paint off because it will come off with water. So we're going to use chalk because it is an easy cleanup in a few days when you're all done. And what we're going to do is we are just going to map out everything that we are going to be painting today. So we are going to start by drawing where we want our tree trunk to come down. So it's going to come all the way, it touches the very top of your canvas, and it's going to come all the way down to the bottom. Our tree trunk does get bigger at the bottom, so you do want to make sure that you've pulled it out a little bit at the bottom so you can see how it goes sort of from thin, and it's going to come all the way out. And then off of our tree trunk, we are going to have the main branch, and you can draw this however you want. So I've drawn my main branch. This is where my cat is going to sit. And I've got it coming all the way across, and it actually falls off the side of the canvas. And then from there, you are going to put on about 3 or 4 more branches that are falling off of this particular branch. So we've got about 3 twigs, and then we've got the main branch. And then coming up here, we're going to have one more that just sits up behind. So none of this is in front of our moonlight right now. It's all going to shape off and sort of frame where the cat is going to go. So we're not going to do the cat right now, but we're going to continue with the other branches. So we have 2 more. We have one small one that just comes up off the top, and then another one that's gonna kind of come across the top of our cat. And off of these 2 branches, you can draw a couple of little twigs. We don't have to worry so much about all of these little ones. Those are the ones we will paint as we get through the workshop. Right now, you're just mapping out your main branches and your twigs just so that we can frame around where the cat is going to go. While we have that, like I said, down here, you're just gonna have a couple of branches, and you wanna make sure, the trick is that they do have a little bit of a curve to them. If they are straight and coming directly off of the branch, it's gonna end up looking a little bit like maybe a telephone pole or something. So you want to make sure that you have some natural curves in your branch. Now we're gonna get started with applying the black paint. So I'm using just let's see if you can see that, there we go, a square flat brush. So the reason I like this brush so much is because when you hold it nice and tall against your canvas, you can get those really, really, really thin lines on your tree branches. So rather than using a small pointy one that has some flexibility in this brush, when pushed hard against the canvas, you won't be able to have much movement and you can get those lines really thin. So to prep our brush first and get it all ready for our painting, what we're gonna do is we're going to dip it. So I've got just a little basin of water, and these mushroom containers are amazing because I find them very, very, very durable, as well as they hold your paintbrushes perfectly. Rather than the cups, which tend to knock over, the mushroom containers are great, and it's recycling them, which is fantastic. So to prep your brush, what you want to do is just dip it in water and take off a little bit of the excess water on the sides of the basin. Now on your paper towel, you are going to lay it flat and pull it back. Now the difference between drying your brush by squishing it this way and by doing this is unbelievable. Many times, we're trying to rush through things quickly and you just sort of do a quick dry and you push it all down. But what ends up happening is you separate your bristles, and that's going to be very, very, very tricky to paint, especially these nice fine lines on our tree. So anytime you're prepping a brush, you wanna make sure that you lay it almost completely flat against the paper towel, and you just pull it away from the ferrule, which is the metal part that holds the bristles. So you're just pulling it back. And what that's gonna do is it's going to realign all of the bristles and get them nice and flattened and ready to paint. And then what we're going to do is you are going to dip just a little bit of black paint, and I encourage dipping rather than scooping. So the difference is if you end up scooping the paint on to the end of your brush, you're going to have a big glob of paint, and then as soon as you put it down on your canvas, it's going to be hard to smoothen out. And what ends up happening is you go over that area over and over to smooth it out, and that goop ends up turning into a blob on your canvas, and it's quite frustrating, especially with black. So I'm going to encourage you just to dip a little bit of paint on the ends of your brush, and you're going to just take the excess off onto the paint palette or paint plate. And then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to start to map out where our tree is going to go. I'm painting my painting upside down, but I'm going to encourage you guys to paint starting away from you and pulling it down towards you. So what you're going to do is you're going to start at the very top of your tree, and you're going to just outline the edge of the tree, and you're not going to stop even if you run out of paint. So you want to have that consistent line down. Now the reason why I encourage you to keep going even if you run out of paint and it starts to get a little bit blotchy is because the more times that you stop, reapply, and add to it, what's going to happen is that nice fine line, which is going to be our silhouette, is going to get bumpy, and it's not going to look even. And if you want your picture to look realistic, you want to make sure that those lines right on the outside are very solid. So now that we've sort of mapped that out, what you can do now is you can paint in the tree trunk going all the way down. So we're starting at the top and we're pulling it down towards us. Like I said, I'm doing this upside down So normally I would be painting it this way. The reason why you want it to be pulling towards you is because if you were to have any extra black paint on there and it gets on the side of your hand, you could smudge it over. And again, we're working with black, which is not a very forgiving color. So you want to make sure that you've got all of your paint applied near the top first and you're pulling it down all the way to the bottom. So we'll work on filling it in. You don't want to have any lines or any areas that are paintless. We're going to make it nice and solid. The other thing that I do want to point out, let's see if I can do it on purpose and then I can show you guys how to correct it, is if you have a bumpy surface and you can see lots of little, trying to see if you can see that there, lots of little ridges in your paint, you want to smoothen those out. Acrylic paint will dry exactly how you see it. So the trick is you want to make this as smooth as possible, making sure that the sides of your tree lines are nice and smooth and very crisp. So you're going over to make sure that black is solid. Just like that. And remember to take your time. I know we're just painting with one color, but if you rush this, then it might not turn out the way that you're hoping it to. Perfect. All right. Oh, hi, Debbie. Hi, Angela. Hi, Katie. All right. Erica, I'm loving your comments. You'd be surprised. Sometimes the dollar store brushes can work great, but I agree. Sometimes it's hit and miss there. The trick is if you can try your best to reshape it. So put some water on your paintbrush and lay it flat. Try your best to reshape it. If the bristles get out of place and they're kind of a little bit scruffy, you can always cut them down right to the ridge, and that could help as well. Okay, so now that we have our black trunk on, we are going to start by edging out all of these branches. So again, I am using that square brush, but you can use the round brush or any brush that you have, as long as it's quite thin, because we want to make sure that we've got some shape to our tree. So for these particular branches and the thick brush, like this, you want to make sure you turn your brush sideways so it's nice and thin, like that. So rather than painting with your brush this way, you're going to turn it sideways and you're going to hold it up right against your tree trunk, and you're pulling out the paint from there. And this particular trunk, I've given it a couple of branches. So I've got one coming right off the top, and I've got the two that sort of stop shortly after. Our tree branches are not thinner down here, so if it's the same size, you need to make sure you thicken it up at the base, because naturally tree branches are thicker the closer they are. And you're going to give it a little curve in where it touches so it looks more natural rather than just having it stick straight out. So we've got that first branch done, and we're going to move along to our second one. So you're going to do the same, starting at the trunk and inside the trunk. You're going to come all the way up and do your big line first. Like that. And I'm going to come down at the base, and I'm going to have it curve in and thicken it out a little bit so that it looks a little bit more natural. And then we've got our two tree branches coming off of here. So again, you start on inside of the main part first, and you bring it right up, curving it slightly like that. Perfect. Hi, Noelle. Okay, and then now what we have to do, so I'm going to show you, this is sort of a good example how I've gone off of my chalk line, but that's absolutely fine. In a few days, when my paint has dried, all the chalk will rise to the surface and I can just dust it away. If I do that now, I'll end up smudging up the paint, even if it's dry, which it does feel dry to the touch. I don't want to do that today because the paint will take a few days to dry. So we want to make sure you just leave it for now. Okay, and then our last tree branch that we're going to do is the one at the very bottom, and that's where our cat is going to sit on. So this first one goes all the way off your canvas, like that. And then it is quite thick, as you can see, and we want to make sure that it's not too small. We don't want it to look like it's going to break. So you are going to thicken this particular branch up a little bit. So I'm going to suggest doing a couple of layers. And what this is going to do is it's going to make it sort of more obvious that it's our main focal point. And it's going to bring a little bit of strength to it as well. Okay, and then what you can do as you're thickening it out, you can add on your additional branches that are falling off of it. So we have sort of this one, and I've got another one. Remember to keep them curved. You don't want them looking like they are sort of out of place. And I might make it a little thicker because it seems like it's a bit thin here. There. If you have rigid paint lines, don't forget to smoothen those out as well. Your acrylic paint will dry exactly how you see it. So you want to make sure that all these lines are nice and smooth. This is a good painting to practice that on because we can kind of push all the extra paint into the trunk and then just bring it off at the bottom there. Perfect. Okay, so we've got our base kind of branches all mapped out. And now what we're going to do is we are going to go in and we are going to add the additional, all these little twigs coming off. So I've seen this painting be done many times, and what ends up happening is sometimes the placement of them, it can be too clustered, so you want to make sure that you really even them out, adding about 2 or 3 per twig from the top, working my way down. So again, this is more so to prevent any kind of smudging. I don't want to bring my wrist on top of anything and smudge it because the black is really hard to fix. But on each of these, I'm going to just come out and add some extra twigs and just give it a little bit more of a finished look. You can have some that are longer, you can have some that are just really small. It's completely up to you, however you want your tree to look. And then we can go through and see how everything is coming together. So I recommend about 2 or 3 per tree limb. You don't want to do too many more. It ends up looking a little bit busy. And always starting from inside of your branch or your tree. I'm looking at mine. I have to turn mine around to look at it this way so I can see if it's missing anything. Okay, I think it's good. All right, there we go. So when you are finished with all of your branches, I recommend washing off your brush. Even though we're staying with the same color, you don't want your brush to be, to get the paint. What ends up happening is that the paint will dry in the brush and it will actually make the bristles thicker. So you don't want that to happen. So even if you're using the same color, it's best to rewash the brush and reshape it throughout the workshop. That way you're continuously painting with something that is almost like a new brush, or that's all ready and clean. So I always recommend kind of washing and sort of reshaping it just to get it nice and ready. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys a second just to work throughout your branches. This is also something that you can go back to and add afterwards. And in the meantime, you can think about whether or not you want to paint a cat, which is what we're doing, or if maybe you want to do an owl. What else can you do? You can do sort of a cardinal silhouette. I think the options are endless. You can even do a dog and just make it, you know, put the ears sort of folded down. I'll show you guys how to do this one, but if you don't want to do the cat, then I recommend maybe Googling or figuring out another silhouette animal that you want to have, or you can just leave it as is, and maybe you just want the tree and you want to add in another branch, and you know, you could always do something like that. So for the cat, I'm going to show you guys how to do this, but I'm going to use a darker chalk because I'm going to go over my white moon. I think I'll use orange, and then that should be visible. Okay, so what we're gonna do first is you want to figure out the body and sort of the tail. So I'm gonna kind of put my tail going over here. So my body's gonna be about there. And honestly, we're just doing an oval for the body. Okay, so see if you can see that. So we've got an oval and we've back. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have his head. Because he's sitting down, he's going to have his little back over there and his back comes up here. His head sits on this part of his body. So we've got his head, which is just, I'm putting just a circle for now. Okay, and then we're going to come down and we've got sort of his little front paw there. So if you want to draw that out there. Okay, so I've sort of just drawn it out, and then this gives me, by using the chalk, it gives me a chance to really map everything out beforehand. If I make a mistake, that's okay. Just re-chalk and only paint what you want there. Remember, it's important not to wipe that chalk off right now because your paint is not cured. Even though the paint feels dry, it takes a few days to really cure to your surface. So you're gonna leave it for now. But that's sort of the beauty of using the chalk, is that it really allows you to get the exact shape you want. Chalk you can wipe off in a few days, but the paint, it's much trickier. And then for this, I'm gonna use the round brush. And to prep it, I'm going to dip it in my water, and I'm going to take the extra water off. And this one, we are going to just roll it. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow a nice point. And I'm got it nice and flat here, and it's just being reshaped like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip it. So the same thing, we don't want to scoop up the paint. You want to just dip a little bit into your black. And because it's a silhouette, we want to do our outlining first, because you really want crisp sides and edges. So I'm going to start by outlining his head and coming down to where his back is. And his all the way down into the tree. And then for the tail, you start right at the tip, and you're gonna come all the way around. Right into his body. And we'll continue our outline at the bottom here. So you're gonna come down to the front of his body, and then for his cute little paw that's reaching out, you're gonna bring that down here. And then we'll come around and we'll finish off the shape of his head. We're gonna add all the details to the cat in just a second. We're just making sure that the outline is nice and crisp. And you wanna focus on that. Because it's a silhouette painting, it has to be really smooth. You can't have any jagged edges around the sides. And his little neck comes in here. All right, so we're gonna fill him in. Make sure your paint is really smooth. Pull all that paint down. we go. Now for his front little paw, you want to make sure you give him a little bit of a foot at the end of his paw. So you're going to come and paint that right at the front. And then we have the back of his leg. So if he was sitting down, he'd have a little bit of a knee that would come out here and go back in over his little paw. So we've got a little knee that comes out, and then you're gonna have his little foot come down at the bottom there. So we've got his little foot and his front paw. And then last is are the two ears that are gonna be right at the top of his head. Now I'm painting mine upside down, so I might need to have a quick look at it just to fix it up a little bit. There we go. Okay. So we've got his little face. There we go. All right. And maybe a little bit of a shoulder here coming out in the front. Okay, so that is the extent of our little workshop today, our virtual workshop. So there we go. So we've got our Moonlit Kitty. Again, you don't need to do a cat. You can do an owl. You can leave it with just the tree, whatever you prefer. But this basically, hopefully, has given you guys something to do over the last 45 minutes. We really, really, really appreciate you hopping on with us. Very, very, very grateful that we get a chance to paint with you guys. Saddened for what's going on in our world right now, but creativity boosts morale and gives you a bit of a pop of color. So thank you from everyone at Pop-Up Painters. We will definitely hop on and do a few more of these. And I really appreciate you guys coming on. This post will be available on our Instagram feed. So make sure you guys head over to instagram.com/popuppaintersottawa. So I'll sign off for now. Thanks again for coming and have a great day. Bye.